Well, it's good to see you all again. It's been a long time.
Good to see you too, Michael. Looking as handsome as ever.
That's always a good thing to say. It doesn't imply any specific degree of handsomeness. just you're not getting any worse.
Maybe you hit bottom already, Michael, is what he's trying to say.
No, like a fine wine, you get better with age.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You running for office again, Gordy?
Okay, so we have everything ready to go now, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you very much.
Just waiting for Johnny come lately, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm just going to wait till it's actually 6:30, which it is now. So I call the November 2nd, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. And I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the shared traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. I'm sorry this might be a slow meeting because it's the first post-COVID meeting I've chaired. However, it's a short agenda, so that's good. So first, roll call. Councillor Parkinson.
Present.
Councillor Day.
Present.
Councillor Jansen.
Present.
Councillor Kobayashi.
I'm here.
Councillor Logan.
I'm here too.
Mayor Martin.
Present.
Wonderful. So first thing I'm looking for is that the near-term and long-term agendas be received and that the agenda of November 2nd, 2020 Committee of the Whole be adopted as presented. Anybody'd like to make that? So I've got Councillor Parkinson moving that. Any discussion? I'm seeing no discussion. So any against? I'm seeing none against. That passes. Adoption of the minutes. Looking for a recommendation that the minutes of the October 19th, 2020 Committee of the Whole be adopted as presented, and that's moved by Councillor Kobayashi. Any discussion? Find a way to, oh, that's good. No discussion that I can see. So all those against? None against? That passes. Amanda, do we have any public participation?
No, we have had no written submissions and no one is registered to speak tonight.
Okay, then moving on to delegations. So it's either Judith Cullington or Carol Brown speaking, Amanda. Which one do we know?
I believe I have Carol here. I don't have Judith here yet. So Carol, I believe Carol will go ahead. We can invite her to speak.
Okay, good evening, Carol. Good to see you here. Go ahead if you're the one to speak.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you. Sorry. All right. I believe, Amanda, you are going to help me with the slides. Is that correct?
Yes.
All
Just
right.
let me pull it up here.
Excellent. So we'll be on slide number 1.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for providing time for me to be on the agenda tonight, as well as Judith, if she should arrive. We chose today's agenda because you will soon be reviewing the CAREP report, the Climate Action Review Incentive Program, And there is a link between that and the item that we will be talking about this evening. My name is Carol Brown, and I am here today representing CENIC, the Citizens Environment Network in Colwood. And our group works to encourage and support measurable progress on climate action and environmental sustainability in Colwood. In addition to this presentation, we have provided a copy of a staff report that went to North Cowichan Council earlier this year. This provides a bit of additional detail and background. And yes, North Cowichan did decide to move forward with this. Slide number 2. Many of you will be familiar with the Clean BC program, a provincial program that provides rebates to encourage clean energy retrofits on existing homes and support for people building new homes. As you can see from this slide, it applies to things like windows and doors, insulation, heating and hot water systems, and home evaluations. The goal of the program is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from residential buildings. The province increased incentives on this program just before the election, and we hope that they will continue this program with the new government. Slide number 3. The province encourages municipalities to provide additional top-up rebates in addition to the provincial contribution, creating an even greater incentive for builders and homeowners to access the funds. Slide 4. This slide shows just some examples of municipalities that provide top-up incentives. Saanich, for example, provides an additional $150 to get a pre-upgrade energy assessment. North Saanich provides an additional $350 for an electric heat pump, while North Vancouver provides as much as $2,000 extra for this. This table also shows one of the interesting aspects of the program. Municipalities can choose which aspects they wish to support and how much they want to make available. Slide number 5. Okay, is slide number 5 up? The province also makes it easy to do this. They handle the administration of the program and provide promotional materials and online links. The municipality can also decide how much they want to budget. For example, if Colwood decided to allocate $10,000 for incentives, it would be first come, first served until the funding runs out. Some municipalities choose to allocate part of their CAREP refund for this program, so that it does not come from taxes. Slide 6. There are several reasons for Colwood to consider this. A, it is an additional stimulus to the local economy. B, it is good for homeowners as they can reduce the upfront capital cost and then reap the benefits of energy cost savings going forward. C, it assists with reducing community greenhouse gas emissions, and Colwood has declared a climate emergency. D, it is set up in a way that requires very little in staff time. E, and it complements region-wide efforts to encourage energy upgrades. Slide 7. So in summary, we would like to encourage Colwood to join the Better Homes BC program and provide top-up rebates to Colwood residents and builders, perhaps doing so through the CARIB rebate. I am not an expert on this, but I will try to answer questions you may have. Ian Borhill is also quite familiar with this program and may also be able to answer questions. I'm sorry, I can't hear anyone. Amanda?
Oh, Michael,
There, that's better.
You're on mute, Mike.
Michael, yeah. You're still muted, Mike.
Yeah, okay. I'm seeing Councillor Kobayashi's hand. Doug, you want to go first?
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Can someone just explain what CARIP is to me? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that term.
That is there someone there that would like to explain that? It is the, let me get this right. It is the
I think
climate
I'd be able
action.
to help with this, Carol.
Oh, good. Oh, Judith, you're
This is-
here.
Perfect. Judith
Excellent. Oh,
CARIP is the Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program. So basically, Colwood, along with all of the other municipalities, pays carbon tax. But when they submit a report saying this is all the good things they've done towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions, they get a rebate on that. And so that's known as the CARIP fund.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, Mr. Chair. It's Ian Burhill here.
go ahead.
If I could just add, give a bit of a sneak preview with respect to our CARIP reporting that's scheduled to come before Council on November 16th. Because this is probably germane to the proposal from Scenic. In 2019, the city received approximately $6,500 as a CARIP rebate. And as a result of council direction last year, staff is putting together a reserve fund for all of the CARIP rebates that we've received to date since 2011, which amount to approximately just over $60,000. So that'll be part of staff's report coming forward later this month.
So, sorry, Mr. Borhill, are you saying that you will deal with this suggestion from Scenic in that report as well as other matters?
No, at this point, there hasn't been a purpose assigned to that reserve fund beyond future initiatives that would reduce our community greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson's hand is up. So, Stuart, do you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Chair. So just a few things. A couple of conflicting emotions when I read all this. Firstly, the provincial government starts a program and then says, and why don't you guys throw some money at it too, municipalities, sort of another form of downloading. But the big thing for me is that Colwood is blessed with a large stock of older houses, probably all leak-like sieves, and could really use some upgrades. And you know, they're older houses on large lots that are perfect for families, which we're a family-friendly community. So I think I'm leaning towards saying, yeah, we should probably do something, especially along the lines of the energy audits. That's probably the first place to start on anything is go get an energy audit and see where you're losing your energy and what you can do. I note that in this report that we have here from North Cowichan, they talk about the intake being April 1st, 2020, and they had to be notified by March 1st, 2020. So presumably they'll have a similar program going next year, but we've missed the one for this year. So we're not in a rush. I mean, my motivation would be, how can we help people really make their existing homes energy efficient? And I think this program goes down that line, but I'm wondering if we shouldn't ask the guy that's talked about in this report, this Grant Mooney, to come and give us a talk so we can better understand exactly, if we're going to allocate money to it, how do we do it in the most efficient way that meets what I consider our needs is helping our citizens with older homes, make them as tight and as energy efficient as possible.
So are you making a motion to that effect? Councillor
Yeah, I'm going to let everybody else talk, but I'm sure they'll agree with me.
Hi, Mr. Chair, it's Ian Burhill again.
Ian, carry on.
Staff would be happy to receive direction to return to council with options to implement this. I feel that we're very well versed in this area. I personally have taken advantage of the provincial grants to just replace our oil furnace with a electric heat pump just last week. So very familiar with it and could outline options for council without much effort.
Great. Any other council to speak? Councillor Day.
Thank you. I think this program will be well received in Colwood. Both what I note that's different from what we've done in the past with Solar Colwood, which also started with those energy audits as the first priority. Many people that I know took advantage of those, and they gained insight into what the biggest bang for their buck would be, but they also got ideas that they might not have been quite ready for at that time, but they might be more prepared now. So there may be people who've done their energy audit and are ready to take another step forward, being as it's been a few years. And I think that coming back with a report from staff would be beneficial, because this program has the added ability to help new as well. It doesn't just have the old hack. And it could also apply to some new builds to be more efficient. So I would be happy to make the motion to ask staff to bring a report back to council about potential incentives that we could offer.
Mr. Borhill, if we make if we pass a motion to ask for a report, would you incorporate that into the CAREP report, or would it be a separate report?
Mr. Chair, the CAREP report is already circulating amongst the leadership team for sign off. So I suspect it would be easier for us to proceed with that item and then follow up probably within 3 to 4 weeks with the subsequent report.
Understood. Okay, so do we have, oh, I don't need a seconder to that report, do I? So anybody wish to discuss the motion made by Councillor Day? And not seeing anybody wanting to discuss that. Councillor Parkinson.
Sorry, I was putting hands up and down like a yo-yo. I would hope that report would focus on what's the best way we can help people with older houses to become more energy efficient. I hear what Councillor Day says. It may have some applicability to newer houses as well, but let's make sure that we don't just say, here's what the federal program is, or the provincial program is, and here's what some people are doing. Let's make it a Colwood report that says, here's how we can help people with older houses. So I don't know if that's an amendment to the motion or if that would just naturally flow.
Mr. Borhill, can we take it that that is read into the motion?
Hi, Mr. Chair. Well, the challenge with this program, as staff would put forward, is to the extent to which the money that Colwood could bring to bear would actually incentivize the upgrades. Currently, there is up to $6,000 available, for example, when you're converting an oil furnace to an electric heat pump, as long as it meets basic efficiency standards. So in consideration of our existing reserve fund of just over $60,000, it wouldn't take very long if we were trying to substantially increase the existing rebates to deplete that fund. So that's really the crux of it, to the extent to which we could bring monies that would further compel people to make the switch. In my family's case, just under half of the total upgrade was paid for by rebates. In addition to the $6,000 that was provided by the province, there's a $350 rebate provided by the CRD, and that's provided throughout the region to people doing that upgrade.
Well, I note that there's some significant percentage of grant applications were actually initiated by the contractor contacting the homeowner. And if we at least have a program, it puts us on the radar of all the contractors who are using this as a way of generating more business. Whereas if we haven't declared any additional money at all, then we don't rise up in the list of municipalities where they try and do that sales job. Any other speakers? Okay, then time to go to a vote on that motion. And all those against? And Councillor Parkinson, I just assume your hand was left up. I should have lowered all hands. So I've got nobody against. That passes then. Thank you very much to our presenters.
Thank you.
And moving on to new business, 6.1. Marianne Crescent, DVP 20007. Will we have somebody presenting this report?
Yes, I'm here. Deanna Eden.
Deanna, hi.
Hi.
Good to hear you.
I will have, sorry, Brent will be helping me with this, with the slides for the presentation.
Great.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. This is Deanna Eden, and I'm going to make a brief presentation for a development firm variance permit request to vary frontage improvements for a proposed subdivision at 3364 Marianne Crescent. Next.
Sorry, Deanna, just apologies. I know you said next. I'm just waiting for my
That's
computer
okay.
to actually go to next. Maybe I'll do this one here. Move my mouse across, and we're just going to do it by hand. No, it just seems to be. There we go. Stick it.
There we go.
Okay.
The applicant is proposing to subdivide their property at 3364 Marianne Crescent to create 2 additional lots. The property is located on Marianne Crescent between Carindale and Hope Road. Next. Recommendations are as listed in the report, but in brief, it's to limit the required frontage works that is normally required under the bylaw, but to install a sanitary sewer or extend a sanitary sewer main from Carindale up to the frontage of 3364 Marianne Crescent. Next. Marianne Crescent is a local road. It currently has a 20-meter wide right-of-way, approximately 7.5 meters width of road. Does not have any sidewalks, no bike lanes, just a gravel shoulder and boulevard on both sides of the road. No underground infrastructure except for water. Next. Table 1 shows what would be required under the bylaw, as well as what the proposed works is, or sorry, what the works is proposed by the developer. Next. This is the local road section, what shows under the transportation master plan, which shows sidewalks on both sides of the road and a bike lane that would be shared with the road. Next. In conclusion, the request is to vary the frontage improvements to facilitate a sewer extension up Marianne. This would benefit the city as it would become ours. So it would be on, they would be installing a sewer on our behalf. It would also be an immediate benefit to the neighboring properties where they would be able to hook up to sewer if they wish. Next. In closing, these are the options and alternatives, and Brent and I will be able to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is not too far away from my neighborhood, and I'm very familiar with this stretch of roadway. Probably use it a couple times a day. I'm conflicted a little bit, and a couple of questions for staff here. I guess my read here is that we're swapping a length of sewer and in exchange for the other frontage improvements that we normally consider. And is that an equitable exchange in your opinions?
Through the chair, this is Brent Wilnar speaking. The cost considerations that are being presented by the developer show that the costs are about equal. There is a slightly higher value to the cost associated with the sewer works. When we put forward the consideration, it was about that value added potential to the community, but as Deanna has expressed, Marianne is also a priority route for a sidewalk. So this really is about consideration and timing.
Okay, thanks. So in essence, and just to be fair, I walked that route again today, and for those of you folks who aren't familiar with that, it would be a length of orphan sidewalk that would lead to nowhere. But further to that, by doing some of those frontage improvements, there is several bits of landscaping that would be impacted that are mature in nature, and it would also eat up parking spots that residents in the area use lengthwise, and it's right off of the street, so it doesn't offer any encumbrance to people passing by. So although typically I'm not hugely in favor of foregoing some of this stuff, I see the value in the sewer extension, and by my count, it could be up to 8 homes that could connect to that sewer, but also with another short length of sanitary sewer, could easily be another 3 or 4 with just, in essence, one property would open up a few more. So, and another question, help me out with this latecomer agreement, Brent or Deanna. It would concern me to think that the applicant builds the sewer and then is able to collect it back from people who join up in the future, and yet we still haven't seen any other amenity improvements. Can you speak to that at all?
Yes, thank you very much for asking that question. And through the chair to Councillor Jensen, this developer has agreed, because of the net present equal almost on the cost, that she would waive latecomer considerations. And so that would require them to actually sign a waiver notice, which would mean that the community that's receiving benefit would not have to pay for that piece of frontage of that pipe. They would have to pay to join the local service area as per normal, but they wouldn't be paying for the installation of that sewer as proportioned by their frontage.
Thank you. And just a final comment. I am in favor of this for those reasons. And I think that if we were to plunk an orphan sidewalk mid-block there, because this home is halfway up Marianne Hill, it would be more awkward to the neighborhood than the slight inconvenience of building a sewer over a week or two. So I'm going to support this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jensen and Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Interesting. I understand this property actually was originally a 3-lot subdivision before it was the 3 lots were consolidated into a single lot a number of years ago. That was a little history lesson I was given earlier today. I do agree with Councillor Jansen. I'm reticent to forgive even a payment in lieu for frontage improvements, which, that's been our practice, is to require some sort of payment. However, I recognize that in this particular case, there is a significant benefit to the community and the municipality with the investment into the sewer to run up to that property. What I would ask is that whether it's the applicant or probably more appropriate the city, that we notify the residents along that route that this work is going to happen, and give them the opportunity to hook up at that time, because it makes sense that while they're laying the sewer, perhaps they put in a T there to connect a little stub at the same time, and perhaps we get more flowing into that pipe from the onset. So I too will be supporting the variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Logan. Now, Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Chair. A few questions. The 208,000 estimate for this sanitary sewer, would that extend it all the way to the southern end of the property?
Through the chair, yes, the intention is to go to the very, I was just gapping to figure out my southeast north, but right to the very opposite Cairndale end, the farthest extent of the developing lands.
So if I look at a map, then I'm suggesting that maybe of that cost, half of it is fronting the property and half of it would be considered an off-site sewer. Is that sort of roughly somewhere in there?
Yes, definitely. We've got Rachel Sansom on the phone that's representing the property owner. But yeah, I mean, roughly some percentages for its own frontage, you're exactly right.
So what size would that sewer be?
I think it's intended to be a 300.
A 300?
A 300. 200 is the minimum required by the bylaw. And I don't have that detail with me in hand right now, but it did come in with the cost estimate. I'm just not prepared to answer it.
Well, I guess my question, Brent, is as I understand latecomers, you could apply, if it was a 300 and your obligation was to put in a 200, you could apply for the difference in costs as people connected. They could pay their share of the upsizing costs. Is that how latecomers work?
Latecomers, thank you for the question, and through the chair. Latecomers are really interesting in this specific aspect. The title with the Land Title Act or Local Government Act is excess or extended works and services are eligible for latecomer. Excess is what you've talking about, the difference between the minimum and the maximum. Extended is where it provides a benefit to other lands that could be compensated for that benefit, is essentially it. We've got the situation on Goldstream that will be considered as an extended service. This as well would be subject to a latecomer provision. But you're bang on, based on the earlier question, for only that portion that's providing a benefit to the other lands, not for that portion that directly resides in front of the civic property.
So I would imagine there's a whole bunch of properties within Colwood that if the city was prepared to fund the extension of the sewer to the property, people would be very happy to go ahead and develop. Are we starting a precedent here? If we're prepared to say, I mean, it's essentially what we have here is a 3-lot subdivision with some frontage works and $100,000 worth of offsite works. There may be all sorts of properties within the city with some cost of offsite works that aren't developing because they're waiting for somebody else to do the work. Are we starting a precedent if we suggest that somehow the fact that you have offsite works is onerous and the city should pay for it? As taxpayers of Colwood should pay for that?
What a fantastic question. And through the chair, it is a mechanism for sewering lands. So when a project comes in for development, and you're going to get me going off site before I come back on site, The ability to extend services to serve that development is one of the factors of the approving officer's consideration. Either it's too far and the approving officer can say, nope, that creates an undue burden to the city, therefore we're not doing it. Or we can say, you go ahead and wait, or you go ahead, sorry, and install it for us and tough, or you go ahead and fund it on behalf of the city for a latecomer consideration. In this instance here, is the project too far for the city to take a capital project intent forward? I would suggest no. However, that would be up to council, and that's a wait and play proposal. We did that discussion with the developer. We talked about, is this too far to run services? We talked to the fact that council hasn't given us any direction to extend services here, namely because they haven't been asked. And therefore, would this be a priority above other areas of the city that would be sewering? So it's basically hold and wait for the city to install those works. The developer then has a choice of saying, well, no, I can proceed in advance of that. That's essentially where the meat and potatoes of this consideration has come down. The developer said, I don't wish to wait for the sewers to be extended by the city under municipal forces. And I will propose this, and that's where the latecomer flips into the consideration. Would these works that provide a benefit to other lands, would they normally be funded by the city? Or would they be normally funded through capital works by the city? And that's what the latecomer provision allows council to contemplate. Would you like to fund it if these works are deemed excess? Or would you instead rather that funding be allocated to those portions of the community that receives direct benefit from it? That's the latecomer consideration, and that's what this developers agreed to waive. They will agree to waive the latecomer, so those people that are receiving direct benefit won't pay for it. It's not excess cost to the city because it's reasonable to assume that we would be extending sewer this short distance, perhaps not in the priority of it coming next though. So that's how that consideration gets flipped to the developer. And that's why the option is available to council. Council does have the option to say, no, we want both. That's where that cost balance consideration and that orphan piece of sidewalk come into question and deliberation. Hope that explains the latecomer and the role of the latecomer. And yes, I completely agree that whole whacks of the city would be wanting sewer extended to it. As I mentioned, there's that parcel 467 on Goldstream that was deemed adequate for rezoning, and sewer is 1.x kilometers away. For that project to move forward, that developer has to extend sewer on behalf of the city. That extension is, again, on behalf of the city. So is it subject to latecomer funding? That's the base question that's with this minor item for us tonight.
And do we have a sense of what the total latecomer value would be? Like if we think about half of the cost is offsite sewers, some percentage of that would be latecomer recoverable, perhaps under some scenario. Maybe $20,000 or something.
That's exactly right. I haven't gone through the pieces. I'm sure that Rachel Sansom have, and she's available. But what basically what latecomer would do is I'd look at the length of equivalent frontages divided by 2 for all the benefiting lands and see how it proportions out. Rachel, have you figured out what the cost benefit outside of the frontage is to these people, to the developer?
Actually, I haven't done that arithmetic. I'd be happy to do that should we be able to proceed through the variance process, knowing that this is just a recommendation to start that. So we could certainly do some arithmetic and figure out what the exact benefit to the neighborhood would be above and beyond what it is to the developer or the homeowner.
So I think that's the question is, and it's not the neighborhood. I mean, typically sewers in Colwood are paid for by the area that's serviced. So if we, as I hope we will in the short future, decide to sewer Triangle Mountain, well, the people on Triangle Mountain would pay the cost. I mean, the city would build the sewers and finance them and collect over 15 years, but typically these service areas are paid for by the people connecting. So, the city looks to me like it's sticking itself with an obligation to do the roads and the sidewalks at some point in exchange for a sewer that it was never going to pay for, that the residents would pay for. So I guess I'm a little concerned about that. I don't think it's a fair deal. I'm also a little concerned, I got to say that, we're presented with 2 options, basically take it or leave it. Obviously, we also have a choice to, as does the the proponent, if they want to say, well, okay, so our frontage works are $100,000, or cash in lieu might be a better option for the city than the orphan sidewalk approach of having them built. You know, the city could actually come up to the table. If we think it's an orphan sidewalk, the city could say, you're right, but since you're building half of it, we'll build the other half and it won't be orphaned anymore. So that's an option too that perhaps council wishes to discuss. And of course, you know, as was talked about earlier, perhaps the other neighbors who could be serviced by this would be happy to get out their checkbooks and pay a little bit to defray the costs to get the sewer service. So I don't have much appetite for this. I don't think that the cost of a short length of offsite sewer is unreasonable for a development. So I would like, Chair, if I could, once we finish this debate, to perhaps make a motion that we could ask for some policy input and help from our staff, because it's not surprising we're getting this request. I think since I've been on council, we've had 4 or 5 of these infill type development situations, and we've addressed them all differently, and probably that's not fair to anybody. We should have a reasonably strict policy that we follow in all these events. So no, I won't be supporting this.
Okay.
And I'll let others talk.
Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. I would point out that we did do a sewer on Machosen at the expense of the Ridley family, and all of the residents along that sewer were invited to take part, and a majority said no. They had no wish to take part, but of course they could join later, which they knew, and these folks would too. Councillor Day.
Great, thank you. Good points all so far. I do understand the discussion and the area. I go by there quite often, and I notice a lot of pedestrian traffic in the area and not a lot of room for the pedestrians. It's certainly a walking to school route, and it certainly serves a large number of homes. So I do have some concerns about, allowing development to occur with basically, 1970s infrastructure when we're in 2020, 50 years later. So I think new builds need to have, a higher standard. But what does concern me is the latecomer arrangement. Now, I've heard about latecomers before, and when we were dealing with latecomers on Winthrop for the water service, it turned out that they did not have to pay. And the one person who'd done all of the heavy lifting on the water supply side ended up completely footing the bill for quite a few neighbors. So perhaps staff could explain to me how that would be different with sewer than it is with water.
Thank you. Through the chair, this is Brent Molnar speaking. Just to advise council, we do have a policy that's been in place for about 7 years in regards to latecomer consideration, and all the applications of latecomers that we've tabled in the last 2 years with council have been consistent. That being said, CRD water, the city doesn't own and manage the water system. It is up to CRD to consider their own latecomer consideration. But Councillor Day, you've hit on a key point that is a subtlety about latecomers that I should clarify. So thank you for raising it. Yes, if a person does not use the service provided that's been provided as a benefit to them, there is no charge applied. On top of that, latecomers have a term. A term of life. Up until about 6 or 7 years ago, I can't quite remember the exact time frame, it was a 10-year consideration of time. Through the amendment to Local Government Act, it is now a 15-year consideration of time. Council, though, has the right to select a different time period. However, in the policy, is that the time period would be as outlined in the Local Government Act. But coming back to your base question, if nobody connects within the time period of the consideration, so 15 years, there is no recoverable. If a person that was perceived to have a benefit doesn't connect, even within that time period, there is no recoverables. In order to trigger a latecomer, it has to be used by the person providing or that receives that benefit for that works. Otherwise, there's no mechanism to connect on. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. I just have one follow-up question, and I've been reading too many reports today, so perhaps staff can help me. I thought I saw that there was a covenant proposed on title to recover. Is that a different report that I'm thinking of?
Thank you very much for that question, Councillor Day. And through the chair, no, there would not be a covenant put on title. I think that committee and council, and at least all the members, have heard a lot about the land development software. As there is no notice of charge placed on other lands, meaning the benefiting lands, it is up to the city to remember. It's also up to the city to not only remember, but apply an interest rate calculation as considered by an interest rate bylaw, which the city has considered. I don't know the year, but it wasn't in the last two. So there's a couple different factors there. Interest rate needs to be considered with it. The city needs to manage the latecomer process for the life of the latecomer process, which is 15 years.
Great, thank you. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Mayor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. So, first of all, could I just please clarify? I thought I heard it, but I just want to make sure I heard it correctly from staff, that Marianne Crescent is a priority road for sidewalks?
Through your worship, or through the chair, to your worship, yes. In our transportation master plan, it cites certain priority areas for sidewalk. Marianne is one of those.
Great, thank you. So, staying along the same vein as Councillor Parkinson, I'm struggling with the concept that basically by allowing a sewer line, it would mean that 8 residents would receive a benefit, versus if we required that a concrete sidewalk, concrete curb and gutters, bike lane, and roadside parking be provided by this development, then theoretically the entire city benefits from that. Am I being misled with that concept, staff?
Through the chair, to your worship, it becomes that section of sidewalk that only exists from property line to property line to the center of the road. That's the maximum limit of improvement at the time of subdivision. So as Councillor Parkinson pointed out, if council wished to go down that route, we may or may not receive direction to extend that to Carindale in the near short term. So it's not an orphan piece of sidewalk, or could go farther depending on what council wished.
Well, I mean, my thinking presently is that we've identified Marianne Crescent as a priority road for sidewalks. So at some point we are going to need to build sidewalks on that road. And if there are not sidewalks in front of this development, because we've waived that requirement, that would mean that the entire city of taxpayers is paying for that, or how we're funding it, I'm not sure, rather than the development itself. And that's been one of the fundamental tenets of us repurposing, and as we begin to rebuild our city, especially with the old stock that exists, is that this is part of the way that we are going to build sidewalks, because sidewalks is a costly thing to go down. And so I'm struggling with that. I'm also, can you, and as Councillor Parkinson has also said, I'm struggling with it setting a precedent that other developers will then point to this and go, well, no, I don't need to do frontage works either, because I'm building 500 meters of sewer line to my property line. So I don't think I'll be supporting it either at this point.
I think that's all our first-time speakers. I see your hand, Councillor Jensen, but I just wanted to ask staff a question myself. If council insists on full frontage improvements, the development can't go ahead without the sewers being built anyway. So if that cost prevents the developer from going ahead, then we don't get anything. Is that right?
Sorry, as I just moved the microphone through the chair, which is yourself, Councillor Baxter. That is correct. We've asked the developer to consider septic, quite honestly, and they went through VHA. We've asked for a whole whack of different things before ending up at this consideration today. So it would be up to the developer then to then choose, and they may choose not to proceed.
Okay, Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All great points. As always, I learned a thing or two from Councillor Parkinson, the senior member of council. But the one thing I was chewing on is that I agree with your point, Michael, that it's choosing something rather than nothing approach. I would love to have sewers and sidewalks all the way up the street there, but I think that might be just a bit of a stretch. So I think if we consider what would have the most value, and also you made a point, Councillor Parkinson, about the city putting in the sewers. Well, I'm quite sure if I was building today and I had an option to not wait for Colwood to put a sewer in, I would probably take it. That's a comment rather than a question, because we all know the folks up Triangle Mountain are still waiting. I think
You should have more faith in your council, Dean.
The strategic plan from like 20 years ago called for Triangle Mountain to be sewered by now. So, I think that's a little unrealistic and utopian to achieve. But some great points. I'd love to have sewers and a sidewalk going up the hill there. And I think we might have to pick our poison. But I had one last point, and it escapes me at the moment. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jensen. Honestly, given the 4.5-hour committee meeting we've just been through, I'm surprised at the concentrated thinking and vigorous questioning going on here. Mr. Molnar, one other question. I see there's storm sewer mentioned in there. What's the extent of the storm sewer that the applicant is going to build?
Thank you very much. Through the chair, yourself, it would be literally driveway pieces. If there was a sidewalk located against that side, which is called to be, they would have to probably enclose more. However, right now it's proposed just as driveway. Now, Miss Sansom, Rachel Sansom, is on the line, and she would love to be able to address council if that'd be so willing. I've got my hand up to try and cue that in, and I'll leave it to you, Michael.
Yeah, if it's relevant to the point under discussion, then let's hear from her.
The storm drain, I believe, is going to be on-site disposal, as there's no formal storm drain in the road network at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Councillor Day, did you have your hand up?
I did, but I decided to let others speak.
Okay, staff, I think I'm right in saying I don't actually have a motion on the table at this moment. Am I right?
Sorry, Michael, other than the resolution provided by Deanna in her presentation, I don't believe we have either, but we'll defer to Amanda.
Councillor Jensen, are you?
I'll make the suggested staff motion. I believe it was it number 1 there?
Okay. So if we didn't have one before, we do now. And we probably don't need any discussion on the motion, do we? No, I don't see any volunteers. Amanda, was that you?
You can ask for a discussion after the motion is moved.
Yeah, it doesn't look as if anybody's willing. Okay, so all those against? Councillor Kobayashi, Councillor Day, Councillor Mayor Martin, and Councillor Parkinson, all against. All right. Has anybody got another motion to make? Councillor Day.
I would ask staff if they think that there would be any point in asking them to speak to the developer about, sorry, I'm trying to think of the right word, contribution in lieu of the sidewalk. So that rather than having an orphan sidewalk or the development unable to go forward, that we receive a contribution towards what the city has on its priority plan.
Through the chair, thank you very much, Councillor Day. Sorry, Michael.
I was just going to point out to Councillor Day that that would still leave the developer paying for the sidewalk and the sewer. So if it's an amount in lieu, it doesn't change the cost to the developer. So staff, did you have anything to add?
No, thank you, Michael, for that clarity. But if we could ask Rachel if she would like, sorry, Mrs. Sampson, if she would like to comment, it might be beneficial.
If I may, through the chair.
Councillor Day, did you want to carry on at this point, or can we hear from?
Let's hear from Rachel.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the property owners would be certainly willing to make a cash donation to just the sidewalk portion of the frontage, and perhaps even look at the design of that stretch of road. If I'm hearing very loud and clear that the sidewalk is very important to the community. All the other aspects of frontage make it expensive. The sidewalk itself is probably the most agreeable portion of the frontage works. So if we would be able to provide cash in lieu of that, or a cash donation to sidewalks on Marianne Crescent for future, we'd be happy to look at that and come with something formal in writing if you wish.
Thank you. Staff, if a sidewalk was being built, would you want to insist on a buried storm sewer underneath it?
Thank you very much. Through the chair. Right. The subdivision requirements for developing these works would be to realize the works of transportation master plan, which is the priority route and sidewalk. Yes, we would look to possibly enclose that storm drainage, or have the developer prove out that it could be done in segmented forms. It forms part of the works that are necessary to serve the roadway.
Okay, so we seem to be in a bit of a difficult spot. And in my experience with these things, this is often an appropriate point to ask staff to go back and negotiate with the developer and come back with a finished proposal, given the slight unknowns there about the storm sewer. Is anybody interested in that, making that motion? So I think Mayor Martin did. Am I correct there?
Yeah, I'm happy to move that motion, but I actually had a comment first. And the question I have through you to staff is, I'm trying to understand why we're waiving, or why the developer wished to waive the latecomers agreement. Like if we still wanted the frontage improvements, and they were to build the sewer, why would they not want? Why would we not just have the latecomers agreement there so that those 8 units that are living on that road can join? I'm lost at why we would not just remove that to help them out financially.
Sorry, through the chair, Mayor Martin, Brent speaking. I'm struggling to sort the question mentally in my head, and please correct me if I repeat it incorrectly. The question is why not? What? Sorry. Mayor Martin, would you mind repeating the question? I can't get it sorted.
No, I'm happy to repeat it though. So part of what the developer was suggesting was, I want, and I'm gonna paraphrase. The developer has X amount of dollars to spend on frontage improvements, is going to be spending that money on sewers, and said, could you please waive some of the other frontage improvements, i.e. the sidewalks, concrete gutter, and so on, because of the additional expenses. But one of the things that we are going to be doing is we will waive the latecomers agreement on the sewer portion for those 8 residents that sewer will frontage. And my question is, why remove that requirement, not waive it, make there be a latecomers agreement, and that way they have the ability to cost recover.
I understand the question. Thank you.
Argument, I guess, is the question I have to you.
Yeah. Thanks for doing it. This is this subdivision has got about a 2.5 year, maybe even more than that history, and staff have been working with the property owner on either considering the rules and considering extensions and dealing with the feasibility of the land ultimately. You have raised an excellent point. I think there may be just some caution, knowing that I've pulled up the policy while we're sitting here for latecomers, and it is defined in the policy to be 15 years, which is exactly the reference in the Local Government Act. It is an interest rate calculation set by bylaw to be 5%. As far as I know, that bylaw has not been changed. I've pulled up that bylaw as well. So I think it's just too many dollars for too few lots with 3 lots. And they felt that there might be some consideration to some of those offset costs. I read it as is there's an available 100x out of the development, and to do both would be 200 on no chance or no guaranteed chance of recovery on it. So it was proposed as, listen, can we speak to council about one or the other? And when we drafted the report, staff were careful not to necessarily vary the provision to change the requirements for the sidewalk, but to ask for one in lieu of the other. However, council does have the option of piecing. And you have the option of selecting any portion of your bylaw against any other portion of your bylaw. So, for example, if sidewalks were more important than streetlights, we could certainly be directed as staff to work back and fine-tune this in lieu of a priority ranking. If I reflect on that SUC report, the spot that spoke about pedestrian and alternate modes of transportation, namely the sidewalk and transit network, and then bike network as being the top 3 priorities. And they essentially even took priority over other factors of mobility. So we could always work to horse trail on that sort of line. It would be another variance report unless we had it very clearly defined here. But we certainly could. We could elevate the sidewalk. We could try and still do the sidewalk and say no to the streetlights, no to enclosed drainage. We can horse trade along those lines, but the staff table isn't the place for that horse trading to happen, because it does result in a variance, and hence this wholesome conversation that I very much appreciate.
Sorry, Mr. Mulliner, did you mean that the council table is not or committee table is not the right place to have that conversation?
Correction, duly noted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Martin, are you satisfied with that?
Yep, I am.
And are you also making that motion that it be referred back to staff to talk to the developer?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Does anybody wish to discuss the motion? No hands? Oh, Councillor Day.
Thanks. This is hard for staff and it's hard for council. Of course, we want to walk the line and make things possible, but we also need to do it right. So I'm just saying that from my perspective, if the proposal comes back as kind of a lame duck, I won't be supporting it. But if it comes back as this is what's doable and meets the needs of the community, and it's not going to be a huge headache for years to come, then I'm willing to talk. So I'm just trying to provide that clarity.
Thank you, Councillor Day. I'm not seeing any other hands up, and therefore, all those against? None against. The motion passes as proposed by Mayor Martin.
May I, Chair, may I make a motion?
Oh, certainly.
I just think it's appropriate that we, that committee asks staff to come up with some policy alternatives for infill subdivisions such as we're dealing with today, so we can hopefully have some consistency going forward in the future.
Would you be wanting that in a particular time frame, or with any particular priority?
No, I mean, if they want to go through this on a few more infills until we get a good policy, they can go through it. I know they got a lot on their plate. I'll leave it to them to sort it
out. Anybody wish to discuss Councillor Parkinson's motion? Hearing none. Oh, Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Chair Baxter. I'm going to support Councillor Parkinson on this one because, to tell you the truth, the past ones, everything's been it's been inconsistent in my eyes. So I watched this with bated breath. Let me put it this way, because we have been inconsistent. So we do need at least some guidelines to look after this so that we are consistent. You don't want to treat any one developer unfairly. It's just, we have orphan pieces of sidewalk in various parts of our municipality right now. So I think I'm just speaking my mind, just saying that I'm going to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi. I will just say that staff might be thinking that it's very difficult to be consistent in a situation where every proposal is different because the costs are always different and the situation about what's already been built has been different. But I would hope that they can come up with enough general guidance that we can achieve greater consistency at least. So seeing no more hands, all those against? None. So that passes. Thank you, Councillor Parkinson. And now, if I've got my agenda right, the next issue is Economic Recovery Action 1.6, incentives in the form of deferrals of development and construction fees for new high-density development applications within growth areas. Mr. Nyhus, are you presenting on this?
Yes, I am, Chairman Baxter. Thank you very much. Good evening, committee. This report is to suggest to the Committee of the Whole a plan for recommendation to Council to defer some of the fees that are incurred by developers in specific areas of the city for high-density developments. The fees suggested in this report are only the building permit fees and DCCs. Other fees are not included, and deposits for securities would be part of a different report dealing with them as per item 1.7 of the COVID action plan. The upfront cost of fees can be a substantial burden for a developer and may need to be funded by the borrowing of money to cover these. It is the hope that by allowing a deferral of the payment set out in this report or as council directs, that the upfront financial burden can be eased somewhat, encouraging a developer to push forward with a development that they may not otherwise feel is feasible. The areas specified in this report are the transit growth areas identified in the OCP. But the committee can certainly expand on this initiative to other areas of the city as they see fit. Building permit fees can be spread out as per this report or the direction of council. Irrevocable letters of credit for DCCs can be drawn as per milestones that are a stage of construction or completion, or chronologically as per the development cost charge installments regulation. I'm available to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Any, Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Chair. I point everybody to the discussion section on the first page of Mr. Nyhusen's report. By the way, excellent report, Mr. Nyhusen. Thank you very much. In the discussion, it says, in July of 2020, when the COVID economic recovery plan was adopted, there was a concern that development in Colwood would stall as a result of the pandemic. This concern has not manifested, and 2020 development to date has kept pace with 2019. Given the current pace of development, there may be no COVID economic need for this incentive. I agree completely with that, and I would like to move option 1, that the committee receives this report for information and takes no action. Should committee not agree with me either tonight or in the future, I've got lots to say about this, but we'll see how far this motion goes.
Definitive action by Councillor Parkinson. As it's getting late, and this may be a chance to finish this early, I'm going to see if there's any discussion on that motion. Councillor Day, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I'm good.
Anybody else? Okay, any against the motion? And I see none. Perfect score for Councillor Parkinson. That motion passes. And we move on to our last item. Household Innovations Prosperity Project, introduced by Mr. Borhill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report before you outlines an opportunity to take advantage of a Vancouver Foundation grant to complete a new 18-month program we're calling the Household Innovations Prosperity Project, or HIP, through 2021 and 2022. The grant funding would be used to cover the cost of contracted services that would be used by the city to carry out the bulk of the work. The primary goal of this proposed project is to use information and direction gathered from Colwood residents to build an evidence-based foundation for economic development. It would see public engagement specialists go to the community and undertake intensive research, developing deep understandings of the challenges that Colwood's individuals and families face to achieving more prosperous lives. These data and continued collaboration with community contacts would then be used to develop options to pursue truly made in Colwood economic development and community well-being initiatives. These options would also be available to the city's consideration, as well as that of allied service providers such as Island Health, the Capital Regional District, and local not-for-profit organizations. We recognize that there's likely some policy directions that wouldn't be under the purview of the city. Staff recommend that the council endorse the grant application of the grant to the Vancouver Foundation that would permit this project to be carried out using in-kind staff support and without the need to draw on new municipal funds derived from property taxes. Staff estimate that approximately 1.5 days of staff time per week would be required to manage the 18-month project, which would amount to approximately 250 hours of in-kind staff time. Upon completion of the status of the Vancouver Foundation grant, which has already been submitted, council would be given a full project charter, including a detailed timeline for final consideration before proceeding. If council chooses not to endorse the application, staff would withdraw it. So the recommendations before you are that the report titled Economic Recovery Household Innovations Project be received, and that council supports the application to the Vancouver Foundation Systems Change Grant Program in the amount of $190,000 to fund the Household Innovations Prosperity Project. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Pam Moore, a public health professional and consultant specializing in healthy built environment policy, who assisted the city in the compilation of the Vancouver grant application. Pam has joined us tonight and is available to answer questions about the proposed HIP project and associated grant application. That concludes my introduction. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Borhill. Councillor Day, you have the question?
I actually was going to move the recommendation so that we would have something to talk about.
Thank you, Councillor Day. That's been moved. Any discussion? Did you want to motivate, Councillor Day?
I'll just say that I think that it you know, I find it easy to find things to be concerned about, but at the same time, every opportunity that we have to know our community and their challenges better puts us in a better position to really advocate for things that will make our community better. So from that perspective, I think that an investment of staff time to work with other professionals, including those at the Vancouver Island Health Authority, to understand the underlying issues in our community is time well spent.
Thank you for that point, Councillor Day. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Chair Baxter. Just a comment. Thank God we maintained their budget then. I just want to make sure that I want to confirm that it's going to be within staff, and what I'm talking about is within the current capabilities of the current staff, and no extra cost for extra staff or consultants. I just want that confirmed in my own head.
Mr. Bordeaux?
Mr. Chair, staff are proposing that if council endorses this grant application, they include this as a priority project for 2021 and 2022. In that case, we would work it into our planning, and we put forward that we're able to manage it with existing resources that are allocated to the community planning department.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi. And if we do not get the grant, then you'll be back at council, Mr. Bordeaux?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. We would advise that we shouldn't proceed with this under the structure that's been proposed. We would likely look at different options as to how to pursue this same set of objectives.
Thank you, Mr. Bordeaux. Any further discussion? I don't see any hands. Anybody against? No hands. That's a perfect score too. Thank you all. Everybody knows what we're looking for next.
Move adjournment.
Councillor Day, well done. And well done everybody else on a long day. I'm off to get some refreshment. Good night.